Chapter 81. Unfortunately, there was no light and nothing could be seen. Xin Miao hesitated for a moment and did not dare to move as she was afraid of alarming the person on the bed, so she could only use Xie Jingxing's clothes to cover her mouth and nose. She thought that this incense was not a good thing and also thought that she must not inhale it, and even thought of using Xie Jingxing's clothes to cover her mouth and nose, but forgot that Xie Jingxing was a male. When Xie Jingxing realized that there was a problem with the incense, he had already inhaled too much, and he was still carrying a little girl in his embrace. Now Shen Miao was still wet behind the ears, and even though she had a flat figure, she was still a warm and fragrant jade. His body was somewhat tense, and at this critical moment, Shen Miao still rubbed against him and buried half of her head in his embrace. Xie Jingxing took a deep breath. Ever since he was born, this was the first time he was in such a sorry state. Looking at the top of his head, that big bed was creaking nonstop and the female and male's voices were intertwined, making one's heart beat faster and one's face blush. That movement made one suspect that the bed would not be able to withstand such movements and collapse. After clenching one's teeth and listening for another half an hour, the movements on the bed gradually became smaller, as if it was tired for a while. Xin Miao's body was also very stiff, but at this moment, she felt Xie Jingxing hugging her and rolling on the ground before taking advantage of the window that was not closed to fly out. One did not know how he was able to see so accurately that he did not alert Prince Yu. Not far out, one saw Gu Yu and the other two with an anxious expression. Seeing them coming out, Jingzhe almost jumped up in excitement but was afraid that others outside would hear it. So she said softly, "Young lady, this servant is very worried. Just now someone went in and was not discovered." Her words abruptly stopped because at this moment she saw Shen Miao's posture. Shen Miao was still being carried by Xie Jingxing, and as Xie Jingxing was very tall, it was effortless for him to carry her. Jingzhe angrily said, "Quickly put down my young lady." Xie Jingxing raised his eyebrows and let go. With a pa sound, Shen Miao directly fell onto the ground. Gu Yu was angry and furious. She did not expect that Xie Jingxing would let go in such a rough manner. She hurriedly helped Shen Miao up and comforted. "Is young lady all right?" Mo Qing stared at Xie Jingxing, and his heart was filled with bewilderment. This young master, who seemed to have an extraordinary background, had excellent martial arts. Unexpectedly, he was completely powerless against him. With such skill, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, but appearing here in the middle of the night was indeed suspicious. Just now when he brought Gu Yu and Jingzhe out, he saw someone entering Shen Miao's room, and behind them was a group of highly skilled guards. If he did not hide quickly, it would be troublesome. Mo Qing could not help but look at Shen Miao again. Could it be that Shen Miao had long known that there would be such a group of people coming tonight? Then what was the meaning of swapping Shen Qing over? Shen Miao stood up and patted the dust off her body before calmly looking at Xie Jingxing. The deeper the dew is, the more one will not disturb the little Marquis's work. We will leave first. Her attitude was very distant. At this time, the rain had not stopped, and as the rain fell on her body, her clothes became wet. With the light from the lantern outside, Xie Jingxing's sharp eyes swept across her face and suddenly smiled as if he was watching a good show. To leave from here, one need to pass through the outer courtyard, and there are a large number of guards guarding. If you want to go to your death, this Marquis would never stop people from going to their death. Please. His words were really annoying, and there was a mischievous smile on his handsome face. Shen Miao looked at Mo Qing, and Mo Qing shook his head and blushed with some shame. This subordinate does not have the confidence to do it alone. Even though Prince Yu was incompetent, his subordinates were not to be trifled with. Little Marquis seems to have a card up his sleeve, she said after a moment of silence. Chapter 82. Xie Jingxing's lips curled into a smile as he got up to leave. He actually had the intention of ignoring this group of people. "Can you help me?" she asked. Xie Jingxing turned around and thought for a moment before nodding his head. "It is not impossible, but if you beg me, I will bring you out." Gu Yu's and Jingzhe's expression changed. This Xie Jingxing's temperament was so mischievous and his tone was so frivolous. Facing this handsome face, if it was any other female, they would have blushed and their heart would palpitate. If it was not for their eagerness to protect their mistress, One fear that Jing Jia and Gu Yu would not be able to get angry today. Imo Qing frowned. Shun Miao was Shen Xian's daughter and was usually pampered and spoiled. She looked to have a stubborn temperament, and with Xie Jingxing's provocation, one fear that Shun Miao would fly into a rage. But out of Imo Qing's expectation, when Shen Miao heard it, she quickly said, "All right. I beg you, bring us out." Her words were spoken so quickly that Xie Jingxing could not help but choke. He carefully assessed the young lady in front of him. Even though she was begging him, her gaze was completely different, and her posture was calm. She didn't have the slightest intention of lowering herself to him. That feeling was very subtle, as if he was not asking for help, but was instead being ordered by someone high above. Not waiting for Xie Jingxing to speak, Shen Miao immediately said, "Little Marquis wants to go back on his words? You really have the heart of a villain." Xie Jingxing smiled and said softly to the person behind him, "Come out." But in a blink of an eye, a group of black-clad people swept over from all directions. With a rough calculation, there were more than 10 of them, which were comparable to the people that Prince Yu brought. Jingjia and Guyu jumped in shock, and Imo Qing was also surprised. His martial arts were not weak, but he did not know when did so many people hide here. It was obvious that the other party's skills were above his. However, the young man in front of them was able to mobilize so many experts so easily. It was really hard to guess his identity. Xie Jingxing said, "Be more nimble in your actions. Do not beat the grass and alert the snake." The men in black bowed their heads in acknowledgement and disappeared into the night in the blink of an eye. Their movements were surprisingly consistent, and it was rare to have such temperament among the guards that were raised by Ming Qi. Shen Miao pondered in her heart and heard Xie Jingxing saying, "It will take some time. Let's go from the other side." He turned around and walked in the opposite direction, looking very familiar with the layout of the temple. "Follow him," Shen Miao said. One did not know how Xie Jingxing's subordinates arranged, as they did not meet anyone along the way. Even to the southern pavilion where Shan Qing and Shen Yu stayed, there was not a single guard outside. After safely sending them over, Shen Miao said to Imo Qing, "You go back?" The guards had their own place to stay. Tonight Imo Qing sneaked out, and if he was discovered, one feared that there would be changes. Gu Yu and Jingzhu accompanied Shen Miao into the room, but Xie Jingxing did not leave. Jingzhu stepped forward to stop Xie Jingxing from entering the inner room and looked at him vigilantly. "Gentlemen, please stay." Xie Jingxing really stopped and looked at Shen Miao's back as he said with a smile, "Shen Miao, you have wasted this marquee time for an entire night and you don't even need to explain?" Shen Miao's footsteps paused as she sighed in her heart. Xie Jingxing, this person, seemed to be born with a clever and exquisite heart. His hearing and eyes were so sharp that it made others jealous, and many things could be seen clearly with just one look. She was too lazy to hide it from him and looked at Jingjia and Guyu. "Both of you go to the outer room to sleep first. Little Marquis, please follow me." "Young lady," Guyu was somewhat flustered. "This is not reasonable. To be in the same room with an unfamiliar male in the night, it would be shocking if it was spread out. If she was caught by others, Shun Miao would really be finished." The matter with Fu Xiu could be said to be a young female's lovesickness. After all, nothing had happened. But this kind of matter would ruin one's reputation, and it would not be clear even if one jumped into the Yellow River. Chapter 83. No one knows what is wrong with it. Shen Miao did not intend to listen to the two maids and looked at Xie Jingxing. "Come in." Xie Jingxing shrugged his shoulders and followed Shun Miao into the inner room. Under the uneasy eyes of the two maids, Shun Miao calmly closed the door. After lighting the oil lamp and closing the windows, Shen Miao sat down in front of the table to isolate the pitter-patter of rain outside. Xie Jingxing leaned against the wall with interest as he watched her pour the tea and asked, "Why are you not afraid of me?" "Why should I be afraid of you?" Shun Miao retorted. "An unmarried young lady and an unfamiliar male in the same room. Not afraid that I will do something to you?" His smile became nastier, but under the light, he looked even more unreasonably handsome. "Just now I have already heard about other people's unmarried affairs with you. Do not little Marquis feel that it is too late to be afraid now?" Shun Miao lightly said. Xie Jingxing was surprised for a moment, and an incredulous look appeared on his handsome face. These years he had experienced a lot of things. He had seen the things that others at his age should have seen and seen the things that others should not have seen at his age. At least in the Ding capital and even in Ming-Chi, he was considered to be experienced and knowledgeable. But this was the first time that there was a female that mentioned the words unmarried affairs to him without batting an eyelid. Just now in the darkness he could not see Shen Miao's expression, but now thinking about it, ever since they went out, Shen Miao's voice was very calm and her attitude was very calm, as if the person who heard the unmarried affairs with him was someone else. He almost suspected if this girl was a monster. "Are you a female or not?" Xie Jingxing said as he crossed his arms. A normal female would not be so embarrassed that they would not be able to show their face and no longer mention the matter. But she did not have any reaction previously and even mentioned it afterwards without a shred of shame. Even if she was the daughter of the formidable great general, she was really too special. Shen Miao did not speak. Xie Jingxing nodded his head, almost forgot. "You are naturally not a female. You are just a little girl." Even though Shen Miao was experienced in her actions, her appearance was very cute, especially her white face that had not shed the baby fat. When she did not speak, she looked much younger. Xie Jingxing thought in his heart that it was most likely that she was too young and did not know about the affairs of the boudoir, thus her attitude was so calm. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was because of this reason. Xie Jingxing walked over and looked down at Shen Miao. "Just now the incense bill has not been settled with you and I almost fell down." He grabbed Shen Miao's face and pinched it twice. "What do you want to say?" Shen Miao was stunned for a moment, as she did not expect that Xie Jingxing would suddenly make such an action, and the other party seemed to feel that it was very fun and pinched 2 more times. It was not a gentle pinch but a ravage that did not have any protective feelings for the fairer sex. It was as if he really treated her as a little girl who was ignorant of the ways of the world. "Impudent." Subconsciously, she shouted in a low voice. As soon as the words left his mouth, both of them were stunned. Under the light, the young man's handsome face stiffened. A complicated look flashed across his sharp, black eyes. He retracted his hand, chuckled, and lightly said, "This is the first time someone has told me I'm impudent." Shen Miao was somewhat angry at herself for losing her composure. Xie Jingxing was a person who did things that were somewhat out of common sense. Just now, in a moment of desperation, she actually took out the demeanor of an empress from the inner and outer palaces. This person was very smart, and it was best not to be discovered. But she did not know what to say, and could only remain silent. Xie Jingxing broke the silence. He sat down on the chair opposite Shen Miao and poured a cup of tea for himself. Suddenly he thought of something and took out a paper bag from his bosom. It was a bag of delicately made pastries. Compared to the Guang Fuzhai in the capital, it looked even better. Chapter 84. Xie Jingxing ate the pastries in big mouthfuls and drank tea before saying, "Came in a hurry and did not eat dinner. TSK, this tea tastes bad." He had the appearance of a picky gentleman. "Marquis Xie is here to drink tea and eat pastries?" Shen Miao looked at him. "Naturally not." Xie Jingxing suddenly smiled and picked up a pastry and stuffed it into Shen Miao's mouth. His actions were too fast, and when Shen Miao reacted, there was already a sweet taste in her mouth. Xie Jingxing propped up his chin and glanced at her. His posture was leisurely, but the words he said were very sharp. "Eat my food and now answer my question." The fragrance of the pastry spread in the mouth, and there was a touch of sweetness and moderate fruity taste that lingered in the mouth. Even Shen Miao, who did not like to eat sweet, could not help but feel that it was delicious. "What is the relationship between Prince Yu and you?" Shen Miao looked at him. "You might as well ask me why did I do this tonight? If you're willing to say, I am all ears." Those who humiliate others will be humiliated. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. The expression in Xie Jingxing's eyes changed a few times, and his lips curled up into a smile. His tone was somewhat inexplicable. "You are really ruthless to put your older sister and that old dog Prince Yu together." To say that Prince Yu was an old dog, only Xie Jingxing, this kind of lawless person, would dare to say it. "When they sent me out, they did not think that I am a younger sister." Shen Miao opposed with equal harshness. Her words were cold, and she did not hide her disgust and contempt for those people. In the light, there was an indifferent expression, and there seemed to be a fire burning in her eyes. Really a girl who does not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Xie Jingxing stretched his waist. Prince Yu of first rank will not spare you after this. That would also depend on if he has this ability. Shun Miao was unmoved. You speak so much to me. Xie Jingxing muttered to himself, and his body suddenly leaned forward, almost reaching the tip of Shan Miao's nose. He was so close that even Shun Miao could not help but be slightly surprised. However, she did not wish to be overwhelmed in terms of aura, so she sat still without moving. The young man's face was extremely handsome, and the smile on the corner of his mouth was evil, but his voice was deliberately frivolous. He whispered in her ear, "Aren't you afraid that I'll tell others? Whatever the little Marquis likes to do, I am also very curious if the residents of the Marquis of Lin and had any movements to let the eldest son come to a long temple in the middle of the night to relax." It was not a coincidence that Xie Jingxing appeared here tonight. Moreover, he had brought a group of black-clothed men with extraordinary skills. His identity was even more shocking. There was no such thing as a coincidence in this world. Xie Jingxing did not come to see her. He was probably planning something, and the two of them just happened to bump into each other. The young man's eyes were very beautiful. They were a pair of extremely beautiful peach blossom eyes. When he smiled, he could attract people's attention. However, when he was cold, he emitted a cold and dangerous light. For a moment, Shen Miao was overwhelmed by Xie Jingxing's imposing manner. It was not that she had not seen those people with pressure, the imperial family of the Qin country, the imperial family of Ming Qi, and even those incomparably arrogant Xiongnu, but this person in front of her seemed to be more dangerous. "You've got guts." He smiled. "Likewise." Xie Jingxing stood up and swept a glance at her before lightly saying, "This Marquis is not interested in the matters of the old dog. If you dare to reveal a single thing about tonight's matter, Shun family's girl, silencing a witness is not just for saying." When his words landed, he opened the window and flew out, disappearing into the night rain. The cool rainwater floated in through the window and floated onto Shan Miao's cheeks. The coldness climbed up her cheeks and the wind blew her mind awake, making Shan Miao let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 85. Dealing with Xie Jingxing was like walking on a tightrope. This youth was young but unfathomable. Every sentence seemed to be unintentional, but it was a roundabout way of probing. That kind of dangerous feeling made her uneasy. Even though she did not treat the residents of the Marquis of Lin and as the enemy of the Shen family, but the relationship between the two residences was very clear, so naturally Xie Jingxing would not have no ill feelings. Tonight's encounter, Xie Jingxing should be here to do something. He was different from the frivolous little Marquis Xie in the capital. The him in the rainy night was like a different person. Initially, she only knew that Xie Jingxing had some ability, but now thinking about it, the secret of the residence of the Marquis of Lin and was not simple. Her gaze landed on the table. Xie Jingxing's unfinished snacks were still on the table. If not for these, everything seemed to be a dream without a trace. But now was not the time to think about these. Xie Jingxing was not that important to her now. Tomorrow. Everything would wait until tomorrow. At the back of the mountain, the pitter-patter of rain drenched the entire mountain, and there was a group of people standing under the tree. The youth in the lead was tall and slender. The rain drenched his clothes and also his hair, but he stood like a statue and did not move at all as he looked at the foot of the mountain in a trance. After a moment, somewhere at the foot of the mountain, a small firework suddenly bloomed. Rather than saying it was a firework, it was better to say that it was a small cluster of light, and it disappeared very quickly. It was only a moment of effort before it dispersed. The youth turned around and said in a flat tone, "It is done. Young master is injured." The middle-aged man at the side frowned. He lowered his head and looked at the fresh knife wound on his arm. Just now the incense in the room was targeted at males. Once inhaled, one would be led by desire, and one would gradually lose one's rationality and fall into madness. The effect on females was not that strong as that girl had escaped a calamity. Even though his rationality was outstanding, he was not a saint and was afraid of an accident, so he could only use this method to stay awake. "Let's go back and talk." "Young master." The middle-aged man was somewhat hesitant and continued to speak. That young lady of the Shin family had seen today. Tai, it is just a little girl. It is not worthwhile for me to take action. The youth's beautiful peach blossom eyes flashed and his tone was rather cold. The man was somewhat afraid of him, but after thinking about it, he still plucked up his courage and said, "But the Shin family might know." "The Shin family doesn't know," the youth coldly said. "The Shin family are all stupid. It is not easy to have a smart one." He seemed to have thought of something and smiled gently. "It is a pity." The middle-aged man moved his lips, but didn't say anything in the end. "Let's go." At the same time, in the North Pavilion, in the room that was adjacent to the innermost room, Ren Wan-yun sat in front of the table. She only lit a small oil lamp, and the flickering flame was like her heart. Xiang Lan said, "Lady, it's already the third watch. Let's rest." Ren Wan-yun shook her head, and there was a little irritation on her face. "Cannot sleep?" She did not know why, but her heart felt uneasy, and she did not know where this uneasiness came from. And Gue Momo also said that everything went smoothly. Moreover, when she left the courtyard, she could hear the sounds coming from the innermost room. In the rainy night, she could not hear it clearly, but she could hear the sound of a woman crying and struggling. Although it was not very clear, the mournful and tragic tone was very clear. When Ren Wan-yun heard it, her face turned red and her heart palpitated, but she could not help but feel fear and trepidation. There had always been rumors in the capital that Prince Yu of the first rank had many ways to play with females, and now it seemed that it was indeed so. Shin Miao would definitely have to suffer a bout of torture. Even though there was some fear in her heart, there was a sense of comfort in the fear. In the third household of the Shin family, Shin Miao relied on Shan Xian's backing, and no matter what happened, the first person outside would be Shin Miao. Shin Yu was a talented female who was famous in the capital, and only Shun Qing was slightly mediocre. But she still had a son, and now that Shun Xiu was following Shan Xian, in the future he would definitely compete with Shan Yuanbo for the family property. But now, wasn't Shin Miao being played with by others? Then that eldest saw who had eyes on the top. If she knew that her daughter had done such a shameful thing, would she protect Shun Miao? Or would she give Shun Miao a piece of white silk? Chapter 86. Thinking of this, the panic in Ren Wan-yun's heart lessened a little. She looked at the sky. "I will rest for a while." Xiang Lan and Kai Ju saw that she was finally willing to rest and could not help but reveal a happy expression. They quickly helped Ren Wan-yun to lie down on the bed and said, "For and rest for a while. One still need to preserve one's energy for tomorrow." "Yes," Ren Wan-yun muttered. "One still need to preserve one's energy for tomorrow." After all, the wonderful show tomorrow was waiting for her to personally end it. This rain continued for the entire night. In the quiet mountain forest, after the rain, everything withered and became even colder after the autumn rain. The air was filled with a moist fragrance. Early in the morning, the monks in the temple started to strike the bell. The dull sound of the bell woke up the person who was sleeping soundly. Ren Wan-yun opened her eyes. This night she did not sleep well and kept having nightmares. She only fell asleep when it was close to dawn, and when she woke up, her forehead was full of sweat. "Foreign is awake." Xiang Lan went forward and said, "Wipe your face." After Ren Wan-yun washed up, she looked outside. Outside the window, the tranquility after the rain had been restored and the birds were chirping happily. She smiled, change into a bright-colored dress, and also that ruby-inlaid emerald flower. She was now middle-aged and was long used to wearing dark-colored clothes. It was rare that she personally picked out bright clothes to wear. Kaiju smiled. Foreign's mood is not bad. Wearing such a bright color, one would be more spirited. Ren Wan-yun looked at the mirror and smiled in satisfaction. Naturally, she was in a good mood and could be said to be overjoyed. After everything was prepared, she said, "Let's go. It is time to call my tired niece to have a meal." In the innermost room of the northern pavilion, it was quiet and there was not even a maid in the courtyard. When Ren Wan-yun saw it, her gaze was rather satisfied. Thinking that Prince Yu handled matters very well, even the maids were sent away. If it was not for fear of causing trouble, she would have wanted to immediately announce to the world that the person inside had lost her chastity. It was just that for the following methods, she temporarily held it back. You go and knock on the door, she said to Xiang Lan, and a trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. She also looked down on dirty women, but she had forgotten who was the one who caused Shin Miao to become like this. Fifth young lady. Xiang Lan walked to the door and knocked. First foreign is here. There was no sound from the other side of the door, as if there was no one there. Fifth miss, first madam is here, Xiang Lan continued. But after knocking on the door for a long time, no one answered. Ren Wanyun sighed and said with a smile, this fifth lady really has the temperament of a child. The sky is already bright, and she is still so mischievous. It will not do if the time to burn the incense is delayed. Let me do it. She walked to the door, gently knocked on the door, and softly said, Fifth sister, it's time to get up and eat. After eating, we still have to burn incense. Don't be willful. Still, no one in the room answered her. Ren Wanyun turned around and was somewhat helpless. She did not know if she was explaining to herself or to someone else as she softly said, never mind, just directly push the door open and enter. Wu Jie's maids are also ignorant, leaving without permission like this. When we get back, we must punish them properly. Finished speaking, he was about to push the door open and enter. Second aunt. A light voice sounded in the silence. Ren Wanyun was surprised for a moment and thought that the voice was coming from inside the room, but she heard Xiang Lan and Kaiju speaking in unison. Fifth young lady, second young lady. She turned her head back in surprise and saw Xin Yu and Xin Miao standing together. Today Xin Miao was wearing a snow-white silk dress and a moon-white cloak embroidered with peonies. At first glance, it was as if she was in mourning. To think that Xin Miao was dressed in mourning, one was used to seeing Shan Miao's bright red and green and somewhat rustic attire. This outfit was simply elegant and out of the world. Coupled with her slightly cold expression, there was a kind of moving feeling. Chapter 87. A trace of jealousy flashed in Xun Yu's eyes. She did not know when it started, but this idiot Tang younger sister's appearance was not inferior to hers. But she did not expect that Shan Miao's looks were not bad originally, but because she was deliberately dressed up in a vulgar manner. Now her temperament was outstanding, and coupled with her appearance gradually maturing, naturally there was no comparison. Ren Wanyun was also dazzled by Xin Miao's dressing, and she frowned. Why is fifth lady dressed so inauspiciously? This white and plain. One would think that our family is having a funeral. Second Xin is wearing bright today, Xin Miao said with a light smile. Ren Wanyun looked at her own clothes and suddenly thought of something as she carefully sized up Xin Miao. She did not know why Xin Miao would come back from outside and look so calm. But last night's matter could be deceived to others but not her. She had the heart to confirm something, so she walked up to Xin Miao and pulled Xin Miao's arm with a smile before asking with concern, Did fifth lady sleep well yesterday? Thanking second Xin for the trouble. I slept well. Xin Miao smiled. Ren Wanyun carefully observed Shan Miao's expression and saw that it was not fake, and her heart was somewhat bewildered. When did this Shan Miao train to be able to maintain her composure? Would ordinary females not cry to the heavens and earth when they encounter this kind of matter? Why was she so calm? Could it be that it was all an act? She had clearly heard that miserable female voice last night. Looking at Shan Miao's pair of clear eyes, Ren Wanyun's heart suddenly felt uneasy, and this uneasiness made her somewhat flustered. She smiled as she leaned close to Shen Miao. I am relieved that fifth lady slept well. At first glance, one would discover that Shen Miao's neck was as white as jade. She was originally born with a fair complexion, and at this moment it was like jade. There was not even a trace of stain, not to mention a scar. It was impossible. Prince Yu's methods of playing with females had always been brutal, so how could there not be any traces on Xin Miao's body? Xin Yu looked at Xin Miao, and then looked at Ren Wanyun. She felt that something had happened, but she did not know what it was. Ren Wanyun's uneasiness was getting bigger and bigger. She grabbed Xin Miao's hands and said with a smile, This weather is really cold. Is fifth lady not cold from wearing so thin? As she was speaking, Ren Wanyun suddenly pulled Shan Miao's sleeves, and that white sleeves were suddenly pulled up, revealing a white wrist. His arm was white and clean, like the finest mutton fat jade. There was not a single mark on it. Ren Wanyun stood blankly on the spot. Xin Miao withdrew her hand and smiled. Second Shun seems to be inspecting something. No. Run Wanyun forced a smile. Just now. My hand slipped a little. Her heart was somewhat absent-minded and did not know what expression to make. Why was there not a single scar on Xin Miao's body? She was an experienced person, and not to mention a person like Prince Yu. Even an ordinary male would more or less leave a mark on a female's body. Could it be that Prince Yu of the first rank did not have such means on the surface? But Shun Miao's current expression did not look like she had suffered a lot of blows. But Shun Miao maintained such a nonchalant appearance. How could some things be said? Her eyes swept around and only saw Huang Ying and Qing Wan by Xin Yu's side, but did not see Jing Zhao and Gu Yu. Her eyes turned and said, "Where did the two maids beside Fifth Lady go to? They disappeared early in the morning. I asked them to bring some porridge over. When I woke up this morning, I felt that my throat was somewhat uncomfortable. This place is far from the kitchen." Ren Wanyun smiled. "This child, just directly say it. But isn't the kitchen in the southern pavilion?" Chapter 88. Not bad. Xin Miao looked at her. "I came over from the southern pavilion." "What nonsense are you saying to Second Shin?" Ren Wanyun smiled. "Did you not stay in the northern pavilion last night?" Before she finished speaking, she saw a smile on Shan Miao's face. Ever since she woke up from falling into the water, her expression was very cold, and most of the time it was just a smile, but now this smile seemed to come from the bottom of her heart. It was very bright, but one did not know why, but it made one's heart cold. Ren Wanyun's heart sank as if it was made of lead. "Foreign, it is not good. Young lady is missing." Following the female's panicked shouts, what came into view were the two maids' anxious expressions. It was not others, but Yin Mei and Shui Bai who were beside Shin Qing. "What did you say?" Ren Wanyun suddenly screamed. Shin Yu was slightly surprised. Shin Qing actually disappeared? She sneaked a glance at Shen Miao, and the latter's expression was magnanimous and calm as if she heard a greeting. How can Qinger disappear? Ren Wanyun grabbed Yin Mei's collar, and her eyes were as fierce as a mother beast. "Oh, I know about this." Shen Miao suddenly spoke. Everyone's eyes landed on her. In the silence, Shen Miao laughed softly. "I just came over from the southern pavilion." "Why?" "Naturally it is because I was resting in the southern pavilion yesterday. Last night, I really could not sleep, so I went to look for eldest sister, hoping to exchange rooms with her." Eldest sister agreed and most likely felt that with second Shun staying next door, she would be more at ease. "This morning I met second older sister when I went out and came over with second older sister. I wanted to thank eldest sister for being so considerate to exchange rooms with me." With every sentence she said, Ren Wanyun's heart sank a little, and at the end, it was as if despair was overwhelming. The flesh on her cheeks trembled slightly and her eyes turned red, like a wild beast that was about to go crazy. Seeing Ren Wanyun like this, Xinyu was somewhat afraid. She roughly guessed that something big had happened, but seeing that the first household who had always been secretly at odds with her mother had fallen into such a situation, naturally she rejoiced in other people's misfortune and followed Shan Miao's words. "Correct? Early in the morning this morning, I saw fifth younger sister walking out from the room next door, and at this moment came to look for second younger sister to have a meal together." Shan Miao's voice was as light as a feather, but it heavily hammered on Ren Wanyun's heart, making her so painful that she wanted to vomit blood. "It wasn't me who slept here last night. It was big sister." Ren Wanyun covered her heart and took 2 steps back, almost fainting on the ground. The one who stayed here last night was not Shin Miao, but Shin Qing. Then the female that Prince Yu was playing with was her Qinger. Those mournful and miserable cries were all made by her Qinger. She was just next door, separated from her daughter by a wall. Yet she allowed her daughter to be humiliated. This, how could she accept this? This must be fake. This was impossible. Ren Wanyun's heart was about to break. She looked at the tightly closed door, and for a moment, she did not have the courage to open it. She did not dare to think, and did not dare to see what kind of tragic state it would be after opening it. In the midst of the dizziness, she still remembered that she must not let Xinyu and Shen Miao see what was inside. If it was spread out, if it was spread out. She barely squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. You all go back first. I just asked and Chinger is still sleeping. Let's not wait for her. Shin Miao smiled. Second Shin really know how to joke? Just now one did not know that Big Sister was resting inside, and now you said that you have spoken to Big Sister. Could it be that Big Sister is hiding something? No. Ren Wanyun flatly denied it. When this action fell into Shun Yu's eyes, she felt that it was strange. Shin Miao's eyes moved, but she shouted towards another figure that was walking over. Gue Momo, may I trouble you to help Second Shin open this door? Gue Momo bent her waist as she walked over. Today she was also instructed to come early, and at this moment she had not clearly seen the scene in front of her. When she heard Shin Miao's words, she thought that Shun Miao had already spoken to Ren Wanyun and felt guilty. Gue Momo did not look at Ren Wanyun's face. Otherwise, she would be able to see that Ren Wanyun's face had turned ashen. Because Gue Momo was close to the door, it was too late for Ren Wanyun to stop her. She then heard a creak sound and the door was slowly pushed open. Everything seemed to be silent. An intriguing smell wafted out from the door. Chapter 89. The doors slowly opened, but no one went forward to take a look. The rooms of Wulong Temple's pilgrims were spacious and not as gorgeous as their own residence. In addition, this room was specially selected and was even more spacious. That big bed was in the middle of the room, and there was not even a screen to cover it. Because of this, everyone could see the situation in the room at a glance. Shun Yu was the first to scream. She saw the scattered clothes on the floor, and it was really torn to pieces. The blanket on the bed was casually thrown to one side, and the books on the table were all swept to the floor. The teapot was also broken, as if it had experienced a catastrophe. However, the most surprising thing was not this. The female on the bed was lying on the bed, and she was almost not covered with a quilt as she was half lying on the side of the bed. On her back, there were spots of red marks and there were also some bloodstains and bruises. It was a ghastly sight. There was also a blood-stained whip under the bed that had been split into two halves. Looking at the marks on the female's body, one could see that the whip was broken. Heavens! Shinyu covered her mouth and stepped back. Who was that? Could it be eldest sister? She suddenly turned her head to look at Ren Wanyun. Since Shun Miao said that she had exchanged rooms with Shen Qing, the one in the room at the moment should be Ren Wanyun. But everything in front of her clearly showed that something had happened to Shen Qing. Even an unmarried daughter like her knew that the scene in front of her was clearly the traces of a female being violated. Gue Momo also did not expect that there would be someone else in the room. Just now when she heard Shin Miao's words, she thought that Shin Miao had already discussed it with Ren Wanyun and was about to enter the room to talk. In the end, she was already surprised to see a female inside. Could it be that there were other females that were also played with by Prince Yu last night? If that was the case, her task would be ruined, but Shun Yu's words almost made her soul fly away. Shin Qing? The female lying inside was Shin Qing? When Yin Mei and Shui Bai saw Shin Qing like this, their hearts almost turned cold. With such a thing happening to their young lady, there was no way for them to survive. Both of them looked at each other and saw the despair in each other's eyes. They knelt down and kowtowed to Ren Wanyun. Ren Wanyun stood there blankly. Second aunt, are you not going to let me take a look? Shin Qing asked softly amidst the silence. Her tone was calm, as if she did not see the tragic scene in front of her. Ren Wanyun turned her head and saw the young girl looking at her quietly. Great waves rose in her chest, but she quickly suppressed it. She just quickly walked into the room with a pale face, and walked to the side of the woman who was half lying on the bed. The woman's hair was disheveled, and there were many strands of hair on the ground. It was obvious that a lot of her hair had been ripped off. Ren Wanyun shakily stretched out her hands and flipped the female over. With a loud rumble, as if to reflect her mood, the rain that had stopped suddenly fell again. Amidst the accumulated dark clouds, the sound of thunder startled everyone's ears. Ren Wanyun painfully closed her eyes. The woman in her embrace was Chen Qing. The closer he looked, the more shocked he felt. Shin Qing's face was extremely swollen. It was obvious that she had been badly abused. At this moment, there wasn't a single piece of flesh on his body that wasn't damaged. One of her hands was bent into a strange position, as if it had been broken. Prince Yu was too ruthless. But the person she hated the most was Shun Miao. All of this should have been added to Shun Miao, but now it was her Qing'er who suffered. To be tormented to such a state, the rest of Shun Qing's life was almost finished. She could not wait to bite Shin Miao's neck, drink Shun Miao's blood, and eat Shin Miao's flesh. Rinwan Yun was after all the head of the Shin residence, so even at this time, she was able to restrain herself from going crazy. Instead, she trembled as she instructed Xiang Lan, "Go find a carriage and immediately descend the mountain." Chapter 90. But Xiang Lan looked at her fearfully. "Foreign. At this moment it is raining heavily outside and one is unable to go out." The high mountains and deep valleys of Yangjing Peak were already bumpy, and with the washing of the rain, it was incomparably muddy, and one was unable to move forward. If one were to forcefully go down the mountain, one feared that there would be an accident due to the slippery road. One could not go out in this kind of weather. Then what about Qing'er? Ren Wanyun finally could not hold back and screamed out loud. She gave a slap to Xiang Lan and said fiercely, "Then what about my Qing'er?" Outside the room, Shin Miao quietly watched. She stood under the eaves and looked at the rain that covered the landscape and seemed to cover some dirty tricks. The one who should be insulted like this was her. But now the one who let Shin Qing suffer such humiliation was also her. Hearing with one's own ears that her own daughter was humiliated for an entire night, she could have saved but instead stood by and did nothing. Whenever Ren Wanyun thought about it, would she feel a piercing pain in her heart? Would it be as painful as the news of Wanyu's death? Now she wanted to bring Shan Qing back to the city for treatment, but had to stay here because of the heavy rain. Unable to advance or retreat, would Ren Wanyun, who was flushed with success, feel a trace of despair? Go find a doctor. No matter what method, go find a doctor. If you cannot find a doctor, then you will die here. Ren Wanyun screamed at Xiang Lan. Most likely Xiang Lan had followed Ren Wanyun for so many years, but had never been reprimanded by Ren Wanyun like this before. She felt wronged and afraid as she covered her face and quickly ran out. When she ran out, she could not help but look at Shin Miao. It was obvious that everything was planned, and the one who was resting here last night should be Shin Miao. How could it be so coincidental? Shin Qing had never been a person who was easy to talk to, and now that she had a grudge against Shin Miao, she would not agree to change rooms with her. There was definitely something fishy about this matter. She saw that the plain-clothed young female was slender and graceful and clearly had delicate and pleasing brows, but one did not know why there was an evil aura around her. "Kaiju, go and call a few people over and close the door," Ren Wanyun said with her teeth clenched. When the door was closed, it was as if there were two worlds inside and outside the door. Xin Yu had not recovered from the shock as she looked at Shen Miao and said in disbelief, "Fifth younger sister, was eldest sister humiliated?" Shin Miao declined to comment. Prince Yu of the first rank really intended to play with the other party and left before dawn. He also understood that for a lady from a noble family, having her reputation ruined by an unknown person was the most terrifying thing. But thinking that Prince Yu was not a fool, he would be able to discover some clues soon. After all, this trick was so simple that it was a little violent. She was still immersed in the unfamiliar words and did not know that when her current appearance fell into Shen Yu's eyes, Shen Yu's heart trembled and she quivered. "Fifth younger sister, could it be that you harmed eldest sister? Last night it was obviously Shan Qing who stayed in the southern pavilion and Shen Miao who stayed in the northern pavilion, but at the end they changed positions, and after that this matter happened. If the room was not changed, the one lying there would be Shen Miao. And with Shen Yu's understanding of Shen Qing would definitely not give the room to Shen Miao. Could it be that all of this was done by Shen Miao? Shen Yu looked at Shen Miao as if she was looking at something terrifying. But one heard Shen Miao lightly laugh. "Second older sister, rice can be eaten indiscriminately, but words cannot be spoken indiscriminately. How would I have that kind of ability to harm eldest sister? You have overestimated me." But Shin Yu's heart was still somewhat suspicious. She did not know why, but she felt that there was something wrong with Shen Miao. And last night's matter was definitely related to Shen Miao. Chapter 91. If one has the heart to worry about these things, it is better to worry about yourself, Shin Miao said. "Me?" Shin Yu tensed up. "What about me?" Do you think that after seeing eldest sister's private matter, the two maids by your side can still live? What? It seems that second older sister is really ignorant of the sinister ways of the world. Shun Miao gently smiled. How long do you think that a servant who knows the master's secret, especially when this secret is a scandal, can live? Huang Ying and Qing Luan, who were beside Shun Yu, suddenly turned pale. They naturally knew that in a noble family, there was no lack of dirty and shady matters. Once it was seen by the servants, the only road left for the servants was death, as only dead people could keep secrets. Xin Qing was humiliated by the evildoers, and the two maids saw it so naturally there was no way for her to live. Shun Yu turned pale with fright. She was just so shocked that she had forgotten about this matter. It was not that she was a sentimental person, but to groom a personal maid, one had to put in a lot of effort. If they were sacrificed in vain because of this matter, and moreover, it was the two most suitable ones, how could she be willing? Not only the two of them. Shun Miao gently smiled and her eyes swept across Yen Mei, Shui Bai and Gue Momo, who were present with a meaningful gaze. None of them can escape. Gue Momo and the two maids almost fainted. What was there to be afraid of? What was there to be afraid of? When a person achieved Tao, the chickens and dogs would ascend to heaven, but if the master was not good, the servants would also not be able to escape. In the previous life, when the Shin family's property was confiscated, these unruly servants who used their power to bully others were also helping outsiders. What kind of master they followed, they would have to accept what kind of ending. Otherwise, to only injure one person at a time, would it not be overkill? She turned to leave, and when Xin Yu saw it, she quickly called out to her, "Where are you going? Did you not come to a long temple to offer incense?" Shun Miao lightly answered, "I also have many doubts and naturally have to ask Buddha." Offering incense is not considered as a wasted trip. Dressed in plain clothes, she left just like that, and the cold figure did not stop at all, as if such an earth-shattering event had not happened here today. Everything went according to plan. After a night's sleep, he went to burn some incense and pray for peace. "Not right." Xin Yu suddenly spoke. "Why are her two maids not here?" Gue Momo was also stunned. Today, when Shun Miao met Xin Yu early in the morning, she said that Jingjia and Gu Yu would go to the kitchen to get some food and did not appear until now. Thus, she did not know about Xinqing's situation. Now thinking about it, how could there be such a coincidence? Xinqing and Shun Yu's maids had witnessed the scandal and could not escape, but Shun Miao's maids were not present. It was obvious that she deliberately sent them away. She had long known that something like this would happen today. She had long known that something would happen to Xinqing. Xinqing's current fate was orchestrated by her. Xin Yu turned her head to look and walked along the eaves, but Shun Miao's back was already gone. But those clear eyes with hidden sharpness seemed to appear in front of her, causing her to involuntarily feel a chill. At noon, the rain finally stopped. Xiang Lan ran all over the mountain but could not find a doctor. Usually, other than the occasional pilgrims, no one would pay attention to this place. When the monks in the temple fell ill, they would just grab some herbs to boil and eat. Xiang Lan could not find a doctor and could only go to the monks to ask for some calming medicinal herbs and topical medicine for Xinqing to use. The room was filled with a strange smell of medicinal herbs, and even though it had been cleaned up, that smell still lingered for a long time. The female on the bed had her eyes closed, and Ren Wanyun was sitting by the window. In just a few hours, her brows seemed to have aged by 10 years. Chapter 92. The maids in the room did not dare to make a sound. With such a big thing happening, it was difficult to guarantee that their mistress would not be angry. When Ren Wanyun was staring at the curtain in a daze, suddenly Xinqing, who was on the bed, moved. She quickly lowered her head and called out, "Qinger?" Xinqing opened her eyes, and when she saw Ren Wanyun, her eyes revealed a look of horror as she reached out to grab Ren Wanyun's face. "Let me go. Go away. Save me. Qinger, I am your mother. I am your mother. Do not be afraid. Mother is here." Ren Wanyun's heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife, but Xinqing seemed to be unaware of it as she struggled with all her might and kept staring at the ceiling as she screamed crazily. Xiang Lan and Kaiju quickly went forward to help hold her down. Qing was like a crazy person without any consciousness, and Ren Yuan did not recognize her at all. With such a struggle, all the medicine that was applied was ruined, and those bloody wounds were revealed in front of Ren Yuan. Ren Yun's face was filled with pain, and she could not help but scream out, "Ah!" Foreign. Xiang Lan and Kaiju were shocked and afraid in their hearts. Ren Yun had always been one who had her own ideas and would be able to calmly deal with any big matters. In these few years, she had seen quite a lot of big winds and waves, but now she was forced to this point. The two maids who had followed Ren Yun for so many years could not help but be shocked. "Where is Shen Miao?" Ren Yun spoke aggressively. "Fifth young lady is in the temple," Kaiju said cautiously. "Take good care of Qing'er. If anything happens to her, both of you do not need to live anymore." Ren Yun turned around and walked out of the door. In the Buddhist hall, a huge golden Buddha statue stood towering as it looked down on all the believers with benevolent eyes. In front of the grass, Shen Miao was kneeling on the ground with incense in her hands, but one did not know what she was thinking about. From the morning till now, she had been kneeling here for a few hours. "Young lady, it is better to get up and rest," Jingzhe consoled. "It is not worth it to injure one's body by kneeling. Buddha must have already seen your sincerity, and what you wish for would definitely be realized." What one wished for would definitely be realized. When Shen Miao heard that, her lips pulled out a bitter smile. What she wished for could no longer be realized. Although the mistakes of the previous life could be redone in this life, those who had already passed away in the wrong life would not come back. Her Wanyu, her Fu Ming, did they have a chance to start over? It was likely that it had long since turned into a glimmer of light in this boundless world of mortals, leaving nothing behind. Moreover, she was not a believer. Shen Miao raised her head to look at the huge golden Buddha statue. It was just a cold statue, and it was impossible for it to really save all living beings. If the heavens had eyes, how could they let good people end up in such a miserable state? The bad guys are free and unfettered? She knelt there, offering incense stick after incense stick. She was not worshipping Buddha, but someone who had died in her previous life. Those who died because of her. Since her rebirth, she didn't have any opportunity or reason to pay respects to these people, including her non-existent children. Now that she was here, she could only use the incense in front of the Buddha to pay respects to the dead. "Shen Miao." An aggressive voice suddenly burst in. Shen Miao smiled. The people of the world like to be impatient. She rubbed her sore knees and stood up. Turning her head, she looked at Ren Yun in front of her and said with a smile, "Second Shen?" Seeing Shen Miao smile, Ren Yun felt that it was even more ear-piercing. She quickly stepped forward and raised her palm to slap Shen Miao's face. Jingzhe and Guyu wanted to stop her, but it was already too late. The expected crisp sound did not appear. Shen Miao grabbed onto Ren Yun's arm, and her palm stopped in front of her. "One do not know why Second Shen is so impulsive. Even though you can discipline me on behalf of father and mother, but to hit others without any explanation, one fear that ordinary families do not have such a rule," she said. Chapter 93. Ren Yun did not expect that Shen Miao would actually block her slap. The young female in front of her was slender, but it was very painful to hold her arm. That Tang niece who was originally the most obedient, easy to coax, and the one who could be held in the palm of one's hand, had actually grown taller. She could no longer use the gaze that she used when she was young to look down on her. If she was not careful, she would be plotted against by this little slut who did not even blink. She put down her hand unwillingly and gritted her teeth. "Shen Miao, do not pretend to be stupid. Qing'er's matter was done by you, right?" Now that Shen Qing was not in a clear state of mind, there was no way to know how the matter came to this stage. But Ren Yun was also clear that if this matter was not related to Shen Miao, she would not believe even if she was beaten to death. She did not know what method Shen Miao used, but to touch Shen Qing and make her become like this, she would definitely not let it off lightly. "I am also very regretful that eldest sister was harmed by evil people, but how can second Shen suspect me?" Shen Miao gently smiled. "After all, if eldest sister and I did not change rooms, the person who would be harmed today would be me. I am not able to do such a dangerous thing. Then the person who would be harmed today would be me. It was better if she did not say it, but when she said it, Runwan Yun felt that her brain was jumping and hurting. She clenched her hands tightly, and her eyes were like a sinister snake that should be borne by you. It was you who let Qing'er be harmed in your place. When Jingzhe and Guyu saw Runwan Yun like this, their hearts were shocked and angry. They were shocked that this second foreign who had always put on a kind appearance had shed all pretense of cordiality and was actually so cruel. They were angry that if it was not for Shen Miao's alertness last night, the three of them, master and servants, would not have a good ending today. But Runwan Yun actually blamed it. This was simply the evil person complaining first. She did not want any face at all. Second, Shun must not say that. There is still Buddha above. Shen Miao chuckled, and as her eyes moved, there seemed to be a strange light in her eyes. Everything in this world has a final conclusion. Last night, the one who had an accident was not me but eldest sister. Perhaps it was also predestined. Second Shin did not blame the evildoers and did not blame the heavens, but instead blamed me. What kind of logic is this? Runwan Yun was almost angered by Shin Miao to the point that people and horses almost flipped over as she sneered. You are really eloquent. It was me who looked down on you in the past. Oh, Second Shin actually looks at me like this. Shin Miao smiled without much care. Runwan Yun looked at Shin Miao in front of her. The plain-clothed young female had a gentle demeanor, and there were signs of her delicate facial features. She had already started to lose the original immaturity, and one did not know when it started, but that stupid idiot Shen Miao had completely disappeared. The Shen Miao of the past could not be found in front of this person. She had been playing politics in the inner courtyard for so many years. This was the first time she had fallen into the hands of a little girl, and she had paid such a painful price. The more graceful and graceful Shen Miao was, the more it reminded her of Shan Qing's misery as she lay on the bed. Shen Miao, if you are pretending to be confused, I might as well tell you honestly. Runwan Yun suddenly laughed sarcastically. Since they had already shed all pretense of cordiality, there was no need to put on a mask of kindness. She said, Do you think this is over? Old madam won't let you off, your second uncle won't let you off, and that person will also not let you off. Your ending will definitely be tens of thousands of times more miserable than Qing'er. You will definitely be pillowed by thousands of people and forever be reduced to a slut that cannot be seen in public. Foreign, be careful with your words. Jingzhe and Guyu spoke in unison. This Runwan Yun was the second foreign of the Shen residence, and in any case Shen Gue was also part of the officialdom. Runwan Yun usually looked amiable and noble, but would actually say such vicious and vulgar curses. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were enemies. Shin Miao was still young, and if her ears were to be polluted by such filthy words, how could it be? Chapter 94. Runwan Yun then seemed to notice Jingzhe and Guyu and sneered, You even put in so much effort to protect two maids. I want to see how long you can protect them. Finishing, she looked strangely at Shen Miao before turning around and leaving with a flick of her sleeves. After Runwan Yun left, Jingzhe and Guyu looked at Shen Miao in panic. Guyu said worriedly, Young lady, is it really good to shed all pretense of cordiality with her? Eventually it will be torn apart. No matter how well it is maintained on the surface, she would not have the slightest bit of soft-heartedness. What is the point of doing something that is a waste of effort? Shen Miao said. The way of survival in the harem was that if the enemy was in the light, then let them be in the light. If they were in the dark, then think of a way to let them be in the light. She did not have the mood to play a superficial game with Runwan Yun. This game was like a storm from the beginning, and Runwan Yun had already lost her mind due to her anger. What would happen next would definitely be a crazy revenge. But, after returning to the residence, Old Foreign would definitely favor them. Jingzhe said softly. Old Shin Foreign favored the second household the most, not only because Shin Gue was Old Shin Foreign's biological son, but also because Runwan Yun gave birth to two sons for Shin Gue. Needless to say about Shin Yuanbo, the second household's eldest son, who was currently in another place, would also return to the Ding capital at the end of the year. With two grandsons, How could old Shun Foreign not favor the second household? Moreover, when Ran Wanyun opened her mouth to please old Shun Foreign till she was dizzy, no matter what she said when she returned, it was all Ran Wanyun's idea, so who would believe Shun Miao's words? So be it. I didn't expect these people to make decisions for me anyway. Shin Miao smiled. When her smile fell into Gu Yu's eyes, Gu Yu's nose turned sour and suddenly said, "If it is really so, this servant will take this matter out to threaten. If young lady has anything bad, even if this servant has to risk this life, this matter will be spread to the world." Not bad. Jingzha's expression also turned cold. Even though this method of killing 3,000 enemies and losing 10,000 oneself is somewhat stupid, but at that time, one would not let them have an easy time. Shin Miao was somewhat stunned as she did not expect the two maids beside her to have such boldness. After being surprised for a while, she smiled. That's right, in order to protect her, Gu Yu admitted to the crime of stealing the imperial palace's jade wares and was executed by the crown prince of the Qin country. Jingzhi used her beauty to entice the powerful minister and willingly became a concubine and was beaten to death by the wife of that powerful minister. The two of them had always been loyal to her. It was a pity that she couldn't give them anything in her previous life. Now that he was reborn, he had to protect these girls no matter what. Some mistakes only needed to be made once. There's no need for that. I didn't intend to spread this news. Second aunt won't let it spread out. Then wouldn't this matter be covered up? But after all, paper cannot wrap fire. If eldest young lady were to get married, it would naturally be discovered. Gu Yu was somewhat puzzled. Even if he could hide it for a while, he couldn't hide it forever. Unless Xin Qing didn't marry for the rest of her life, everyone would know that she would lose her chastity once she married. So, they will definitely find a way to deceive everyone. As for how they want to deal with me, it's nothing more than asking that person for help. That person? Jingzhi questioned closely. Who is that person? Naturally, it is that evil person who humiliated eldest sister. Shin Miao chuckled. Could it be that you all really think that last night was an accident? Jingzha's and Gu Yu's body trembled. Even though they had already faintly guessed some signs, they were not willing to believe it. They did not believe that there would be someone who would harm Shin Miao like this. This method was just too vicious to force one to a dead end. They did not believe that Shin Miao would be able to predict the future, and even more did not believe that it was the second household of the Shin family who did such a thing. Even though they knew that the people in the eastern courtyard did not have good intentions, they did not expect that it would be to such a state. This kind of method was obviously used to deal with enemies. Chapter 95. Young lady, was it really done by second foreign? Gu Yu opened her mouth with difficulty. If it was just an accident, they would feel fortunate that Shun Miao escaped that night, but if it was intentional, then the second household of the Shin family could only reap what they sowed. But why would young lady say that second foreign looked for that person to help? That person did not casually find a person? Jingzha was somewhat dizzy. If Ren Wanyun casually found someone to taint Shan Miao's innocence, now that it was a freak combination of factors, Ren Wanyun could not wait to kill that person. So why would she let that person help? Because that person is Prince Yu of the first rank. Jingzha and Gu Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. The things that they did not understand before, now they seemed to understand. If that person was Prince Yu of the first rank, then everything would be clear. Previously, it was seen that Prince Yu of the first rank seemed to be interested in Shan Miao, but what kind of person was Prince Yu? Ordinary females would make a detour when they saw him. If Prince Yu of the first rank had a private deal with Ren Wanyun, then Ren Wanyun would most likely help Prince Yu to humiliate Shin Miao. But now that both of them were in a freak combination of factors, if Ren Wanyun were to inform this matter to Prince Yu of the first rank, with Prince Yu's temperamental temperament, he would definitely not let Shin Miao off after being deceived under his eyelids. Young lady now, do you want to write a letter to master? Gu Yu and Jingzha panicked. Prince Yu of the first rank was an existence that one could not go against. Forget about power, forget about temperament, there was still the imperial family as a shield. No harm. Shin Miao's eyes strangely brightened. Xin Qing is only a primer. The one that I want to deal with is Prince Yu of the first rank. She turned her head to look at the green smoke curling up from the Buddhist shrine. Wan Yua, your life is really hard. You are like a flower at such an age, but your youth is gone forever. You have the title of a princess, but you are not even comparable to grass. Mother cannot do anything for you, at least now, at least in this lifetime. Mother will help you get back at those who had bullied you. In a certain pavilion outside the Ding capital, the white-clad gentleman was playing with the porcelain cup in his hand and said curiously, so to say, that Shun family girl actually had enmity with Prince Yu, using her own Tangjia's hands to slowly pull Prince Yu into the pit. Her methods were indeed brilliant, but as a female, she was too ruthless. He shook his head with a regretful expression. Prince Yu of the first rank? The purple-clad youth opposite him smiled, and the pair of eyes on his handsome face were as sharp as a blade. He lazily said, I think that the one she wants to deal with is not Prince Yu. Not Prince Yu of the first rank? Who is that? The man in white paused and looked at the person in front of him. You think? How about using Prince Yu as the entrance to kill into the Ming-Chi imperial family? The youth lightly answered. A burst of autumn rain and a burst of cold. However, after a night of autumn rain, there was no longer any trace of summer heat. Even the rising sun in the sky seemed bleak and bleak. In the Shin residence, the eastern courtyard was still a busy scene. It was Old Foreign's birthday at the end of the year, and Old Shin Foreign loved extravagance and would start preparing for the birthday a few months in advance. The expenses were naturally not small as Ren Wanyun was in charge of the money. Even though Ren Wanyun ate a lot of it, but every time it was done, it looked rather imposing. And the matter of writing the invitations and sending the wooden paper to the Furins and young ladies of the residence fell on the third household's foreign, the talented female Chun Rochio. Even though she was already middle-aged, Chun Rochio still maintained the figure of a young female. Perhaps it was the scholarly air that added a lot of bearing to her. As compared to the plumper in Wan Yun, Chun Rochio's appearance was a notch higher. It was because of her beautiful appearance, gentle temperament, and her ability to recite poems that the third master of the Shen residence, Shan Wan, was completely bewitched. After being married for many years, even if Chun Rochio did not have any children and only had Shin Yu as a daughter, other than the two Tongfang that old Shin Foreign stuffed into him, Shun Wan did not have any other concubines. Chapter 96. Among the three sons in the Shun residence, each had a different temperament. Shin Xian was upright and resolute, but was too boorish and not attentive enough, and was somewhat loyal. Shin Gue was good at flattering, and was successful in the officialdom, but was greedy for money and lustful. Other than Ran Wan Yun, there were a few concubines in the residence. It was just that Ran Wan Yun's methods were powerful, and even though there were many concubines, there was only one Shu daughter, and was not able to threaten the position of a D child. Third Master Shinwan, on the other hand, had genuine talent and genuine knowledge. If one were to say that among the three sons, Shin Xian followed the old general and walked the path of a military official, Shin Gue and Shan Wan walked the path of a civil official, then compared to his second older brother, Shun Wan had some real ability. But this did not mean that Shun Wan did not have any flaws. He did not like beauties and only had Chun Rochio as his official wife, but he placed too much importance on power and only wanted to climb up. For this, he even stepped on his own superior. At this moment, Run Wan Yun was carefully writing an invitation. The sun shone through the window and slanted onto her body. It made her facial features as soft as a young female's. Shin Gue was tidying his collar and could not help but smile when he saw it. He walked to her side and hugged her from behind. Yeah, Chun Rochio rebuked. What is Master doing? It caused me to not write the words well and waste an invitation in vain. Let me see. Shanwan pretended to pick up the invitation to take a look and commented, the handwriting is graceful, just like the owner of the words. How is it not written well? Chun Rochio's pretty face blushed. When Shanwan saw it, his mind could not help but sway. Even after so many years, this wife of his still had a kind of attractive magic that made him unable to see other females. This was Chen Rochio's brilliance. There were so many daughters in the Chen family, but only she could firmly grasp her husband's heart. It was not because of anything else but her forbearance. Whatever type of female Xinhuan liked, she would become that. One's character could be changed, one's clothes could be changed, and one could cater to one's liking. After a long time, a male would be like raising a cat or a dog and would only have one in his eyes. Second sister-in-law should be back today. Chun Roqiu snuggled in Shan Wan's embrace. One do not know if Yuer is used to the food in the temple or if the mountain roads are bumpy. Xinhuan laughed. What are you blindly worrying about? Second sister-in-law will not let Yuer starve or freeze. Seeing that Chun Roqiu still had a worried look, he said with a smile, You always treat Yuer as a child. Now Yuer is already so big and would reach the age of marriage in a few years. What will you do then? When Yuer marries, I will naturally pick a perfect marriage for her. Since Yuer is getting married, I will pick a perfect marriage for her. That night, when old Shen Foran spoke to Ran Wanyun and Chen Roqiu, she proposed to secretly give Shan Miao to Prince Yu, and as Prince Yu wished, to support the second and third household of the Shen family, Chen Roqiu told her husband about it. Xinhuan naturally agreed. He had been infatuated with power all his life, but no matter how he climbed up, his power and reputation were all inferior to Shan Exine. He was jealous of the first household for many years and did not have any feelings for Shen Miao. If Prince Yu obtained Shan Miao and was happy, he would promote him in the official circles. To Xinhuan, it would be an unexpected joy. As for Shen Miao's future, Xinhuan did not care at all if she could live well in the rest of her life. One do not know if second sister-in-law's matter is settled. Xinhuan's expression became serious. When Chen Roqiu saw it, her heart slightly sank. She knew that her husband had always placed power first. Even though Chen Roqiu did not care about the first household, but for females, it was inevitable that the fox grieves for the rabbit's death. This time Ren Wanyun suddenly mentioned to go to a long temple to offer incense, and those in the know knew that there must be some hidden reasons. One feared that after this trip up the mountain, when they return, they would hear Shan Miao's grievous news. Chapter 97. Do not worry, she said softly. Second Saw has always done things properly. This matter, it should be a foolproof plan. Hope so. Shen Gue nodded his head. Just as both of them were talking, they suddenly saw Chen Roqiu's first-ranked maid Shiqing running in with a flustered face. Foreign, second Foreign has brought the three young ladies back. Seeing Shiqing's expression, Chen Roqiu was much more relieved and knew that the matter was most likely successful. She smiled and looked at Shen Gue, then changed her expression to one of concern. She asked Shiqing, Are the three young ladies all right? Are they tired? No, not good. Shiqing stammered. Eldest young lady has gone crazy. Chen Roqiu's smile abruptly stopped. Everything was like a dream. The orderly Shen residence was in a mess in just a short day. Xinqing had gone crazy. The second household's Ran Wanyun usually had the air of a matriarch of the household. Even though she always had a smiling face, her thunderous methods were seen by everyone. No matter how her character was, for so many years, the Shen residence did not have any problems under her management, and her ability to manage the household was recognized by everyone. However, this noble matriarch, who was always smiling calmly, for the first time revealed a tired and crazy look in front of the servants. If it was not for the maids beside her, one feared that others would have thought that she was a crazy woman that ran out of nowhere. And the young lady in her embrace was really an out-and-out lunatic. She kept screaming and struggling, and even old Shen Foran was alarmed. Even though one did not know the reason, but the fact that the eldest young lady of the Shen family had gone crazy was true. But the Shen residence was also very taboo with regards to this matter. Those maids who saw Shiqing's crazy state were all sold out. It was said that they were sold out, but who knew if they were buried in a mass grave? The two maids by Shiqing's side, the two maids by Shen Yu's side, and even Gue Momo were all locked up. As a result, only Shen Miao was unscathed. In Rong Jingtang, old Shen Foran sat on the high seat, and her face was taut. Her eyes were staring at Shan Miao, who was standing in the middle, like a poisonous snake that wanted to eat people. Three perfectly fine young ladies went, and those that should have an accident did not have an accident, but those that should not have an accident had an accident. The person who was supposed to bear all this was standing here, but it was the second branch's Shun Qing who had suffered. Just thinking of this matter, old Shun Foreign's chest was so stuffy that it felt like a stone was stuck in it. Qin Roqiu and Shan Wan stood at one side, and Xin Yu stood by Qin Roqiu's side, feeling wronged. Her two personal maids were locked up for no reason, and previously she heard from Shun Miao that it would be very difficult to protect Huang Ying and Qing Wan. On the other side, Ren Wan Yun was kneeling in front of old Shin Foreign. Shin Wan had matters in court today and had not returned to the residence. The servant that invited him had not returned, yet so naturally he did not know that something had happened to his daughter. Old Foreign, you must seek justice for Qing. Ren Wan Yun was crying, and Shun Wan was somewhat surprised. This second Saw, who had always put on airs, was now in such a carefree manner. It was really an eye-opener, and Qin Roqiu's heart was somewhat pleased. Ren Wan Yun had always relied on her power to manage the family and did not put the third household in her eyes. Now that something had happened to her daughter, she could only crawl on the ground like a dog. Fifth lady, I have treated you as my own, and Qing had given in to you in everything. You are sisters of the same blood, and not to mention mutually supporting each other. But how can you be so vicious? Do you know that Qing's entire life was ruined by you? You have such a ruthless heart. Xin Yu told Qin Roqiu and Shan Wan about the matter of Shen Qing being humiliated, and all the servants here were expelled, so Qin Roqiu was not afraid of being heard by others. Just as Shun Miao was about to speak, she suddenly heard an angry shout from behind. Evil girl, you poison your sister and have a heart like a snake or scorpion. You should go to jail and die without pity. Shin Miao smiled coldly and turned around to face the man who was striding over. Her second uncle, Shin Qing's father, Shun Gue. Chapter 98. Shin Gue, who was still wearing his official robe, strode into the hall. It was obvious that he had hurried over after hearing the news about Shin Qing. When Ren Wan Yun saw this, she immediately cried even more miserably, Master. Qing Shi, the relationship between Ren Wan Yun and Shen Gue was not that deep, otherwise Shen Gue would not bring concubines into the residence one after another. Even so, Shen Gue and Ren Wan Yun still treated each other with respect. Not because of anything else, Ren Wan Yun was able to manage the Shun residence in an orderly manner, and was also able to be on good terms with the Furins of Shen Gue's colleagues. As a good wife, Shen Gue was quite satisfied with Ren Wan Yun, so he would definitely not drop the face that he should give. Shin Miao. Shin Gue turned his head and looked angrily at the young female in the hall. He knew the reason why Ren Wan Yun brought the 3D daughters to a long temple. Bringing the 3D young ladies of the Shen residence was to prevent others from gossiping. Who would have thought that it was his daughter, Qin Qing, who was in trouble? The servant who came to pass the message secretly told him that everything was Shan Miao's doing, even though he felt that it was inconceivable, but now he had to vent his anger on one person. Since he couldn't vent his anger on the second branch, he would push all the blame onto the first branch. You harmed your sisters with vicious methods. Since Big Brother isn't here today, I'll teach you a good lesson on behalf of Big Brother. As he spoke, he shouted, Please punish me. Asking for domestic discipline? Qin Roqiu and Shin Gue looked at each other. Ever since Qin Roqiu married into the Shin family, she had never seen the Shan residence's family laws. Hearing from Shen Gue, those family laws were only used on Inyang who had committed a wrong, and the descendants of the Shen residence had never used it before. The Shin family was a family of generals, so the family rules were naturally unusual. The servant very quickly carried a long wooden box over. Shen Yu was looking at it curiously, but when she saw the long wooden box open and the things inside were revealed to everyone, she could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. It was a long horsewhip. Who knew what it had been soaked in for many years? It looked black and glossy, and it was as thick as half a grown man's wrist. One look was enough to tell how strong it was. If he was hit by the whip, he would probably lose half his life. If he was more ruthless, it would be easy for him to lose his life. Not bad. Old Shin Foreign was putting on airs, and when she saw her son return, she sat even straighter. She had some sincerity towards Shun Qing, and when she saw that her granddaughter met with an accident, her heart was angry. Since Shun Gue had spoken, she would naturally go with the flow. Since Wu Yue has made a mistake, as her younger brother, you should naturally teach her a lesson on behalf of your older brother. Our Chun family has always had a complete set of rules. If you make a mistake, then you must be punished by the family. Fifth girl, you should be glad that your second uncle is kind and dotes on you. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as asking for the family's punishment. We will open the ancestral hall and invite the elders of the family to judge, and you will be expelled from the Chen family. Speaking till here, her gaze suddenly moved. That's right. Wouldn't it be better if Shen Miao was expelled from the Shen family? Seeing old Shan Foren's expression, Chen Rochio secretly called her a fool in her heart. If Shen Miao was expelled from the Shen residence, then with Shan Xian's character, he would definitely leave together with the first household. Although they couldn't bear to see the first branch doing well, they had to rely on the first branch for many things. This old woman's thoughts were so simple. She was really a songstress and could not be seen in public. Ren Wanyun was also startled when she heard it and more or less guessed old Shen Foren's thoughts. She did not wish for Shen Miao to be expelled from the Shen residence, not for any other reason, but because Shen Miao could not be so easily taken advantage of. She could not wait to keep Shen Miao in the Shen residence, so that there would be more ways to retaliate against Shen Miao. It was just being expelled from the family. How could it be such a simple matter? But in everyone's thoughts, one could only hear Shen Miao lightly sighing as she turned to look at Shen Gue. Chapter 99. Shen Gue was shocked by her inexplicable action and stared at her with a frown. He often put on airs in the official circles, and his official prestige was not small. If it was a normal person that was stared at by him like this, one feared that the person's imposing manner would soften by 3 points. But Shen Miao did not move at all. Her expression was calm, and her eyes were unperturbed, which made Shen Gue have an absurd illusion. It was as if Shen Miao was a high and mighty person, and he was just a servant. This illusion was interrupted by Shen Miao's words. Second Shu is indeed kind-hearted. Eldest sister is bedridden, but Second Shu is not in a hurry to check on her condition, and instead is busy disciplining me on behalf of my father. Most likely Second Shu really dotes on me, even more than eldest sister. When those words were spoken, everyone in the room was silent. A trace of ridicule flashed in Chen Rochio's eyes, and Shen Wan frowned. Old Shen Foren's expression changed, and Shen Yu opened her mouth, but Ren Wanyun lowered her head and secretly clenched her fists. If one were to talk about the 3 masters in the residence, even though Shen Xian ignored Shen Miao, he still truly doted on Shen Miao. Shen Wan cherished Chen Rochio and loved Shen Yu like a jewel. Only Shen Gue. Shen Gue was originally a greedy and lustful person and did not have any responsibility as a father. He treated his 2 sons better, but towards Shun Qing, this daughter, he did not discipline her at all. Most likely in Shen Gue's eyes, it would be best if Shen Qing could marry into a noble family in the future and add a helping hand to his power. This time when Shen Qing met with an accident, the reason why Shen Gue was so angry was not because of his heartache for his daughter's miserable experience, but because his plans were disrupted by others, and he feared that Prince Yu would get angry after knowing about it. He was also angry that Shen Miao had lost a daughter who could help his career in the future. In the end, it was all about the word benefits. If it was a father who truly doted on his daughter, after knowing about the matter, he would definitely go back to visit his daughter first. How would he rush back just to discipline the instigator? As such, one felt some pity for Shen Qing. A trace of awkwardness flashed on Shen Gue's face. Shen Miao's words hit the nail on the head, and he could not help but feel embarrassed. When he looked at Ren Wanyun again, she had indeed turned her head away and no longer looked at him. Shen Gue was somewhat surprised in his heart, and when he looked at Shen Miao again, there was some thought in his eyes. Just one sentence was able to separate the husband and wife. This provocation was accurate and ruthless. Shen Qing was Ren Wanyun's lifeblood, but to Shen Gue, she was just a tool that could be used. To use this matter to make the husband and wife, who had a common enemy, unhappy with each other, Shen Miao's method was clearly that of an old fox in the officialdom. The young girl in front of him had delicate features, and looked extremely docile. However, for some reason, there seemed to be a faint majesty flickering around her that made people not dare to look at her directly. Suppressing the amazement in his heart, Xingui said angrily, "Shun Miao, you still do not know how to reflect until now. Since it is like this, if I do not teach you properly today, I would be ashamed as a son and also ashamed to face your father." He reached out to take the whip. Xinyu stared closely at Xingui's actions and was somewhat rejoicing in his misfortune and also somewhat nervous. Would Xingui continue to fight? Xin Miao was so tyrannical, but in the face of such a scene, she could only bow her head and admit defeat. How will second uncle teach me? Using this whip to kill people to silence them? Or to beat them half to death and send them to the manor? Xin Miao suddenly opened her mouth. Xingui's actions froze. Xin Wan was also startled. Most likely, he did not think that Xun Miao's hostility would be so heavy. Even though Xin Miao had changed these days, everyone had always felt that it was just a pretense of toughness. But now in front of the entire Shun residence, she did not even pretend and just unreservedly shed all pretenses for everyone to see. Evil female, what words are you saying? Old Shin Foreign was the first to shout angrily. Could it be that you want to say that your second uncle intended to murder you? This is simply going against the heavens. Chapter 100. Yes, fifth mother. How can you say that? Chun Roadshow finally opened her mouth, but she still poured oil on the fire without batting an eyelid. You harmed Qing'er. How can you put the blame on the reverse? Where did you learn this rule from? Qin Roadshow thought that if Shun Miao and the second household were both injured, then her Shun Yu would be like a fish back in water in this Shin residence. After all, they were the third household and Shen Wan's power was not as great as the first household and the number of heirs was not as great as the second household. If one did not use some means, this huge Shin residence would only be taken advantage of by others. Ren Wanyun cried as she kowtowed to old Shin Foreign. See, fifth lady hates us like this. She harmed Qing'er but did not repent, and even wanted to tarnish Master's reputation. To be this arrogant, it is obvious that she is using Eldest Bo's power to bully us. Could it be that she learned this from Eldest Bo? How would a young lady like Fifth Lady know so much? There must be someone behind her who taught her to do so. We and Eldest Bo support each other, so how could Eldest Bo's family treat each other like this? Run Wan Yun's tearful complaints were extremely loud and put herself in a weak position. The tougher she was usually, the weakness that she showed at this moment made others believe that what she said was true. Unfortunately, she dragged Shan Xian into it. Dragons have reverse scales, and the current Shan Xian was Shun Miao's reverse scale. Her eyes swept across everyone in Rongjing Tang. They were like tigers eyeing their prey. They were one family, and they could turn black into white and the dead into alive. Being surrounded by them, she was like a piece of fat meat that fell into the mouth of a hungry wolf. But what could these glib tongues do? There were so many females in the inner palace who could speak well, but how many of them were left behind, and how many of them became fertilizer for the flourishing flowers in the imperial garden? Second Shun kept saying that it was I who harmed eldest sister. Then let me ask Second Shun a few questions. Can Second Shun help me dispel my doubts? Ren Wan Yun was surprised for a moment, and when she met Shan Miao's clear eyes, she did not know why she felt a little guilty. But when she saw the surrounding people, she was relieved. Everyone here were on her side, so what ability did Xin Miao have to reverse the universe? Ask away. She wiped her tears. All right. Xin Miao's lips hooked up. Let me ask. That day Second Shan stayed next to eldest sister and was very close. If anything happened, how could Second Shan not hear it? Ren Wan Yun was stunned. If eldest sister had resisted, she would have made a sound. That day, eldest sister's body was full of scars. I think she would have struggled to call for help. Second aunt was so close. Why didn't she hear it? Could it be that he heard it, but was too tired to come out to take a look? Ren Wan Yun wanted to open her mouth to refute, but her palms broke out in cold sweat. Of course, maybe second aunt didn't hear the call for help at all. Why? It's naturally because big sister didn't call for help at all. Big sister, why didn't you call for help? Could it be that you know the bad guy? You are talking nonsense. This time Ren Yun could no longer bear it and sharply interrupted Shan Miao's words. In the end, Shen Gui and Shun Wan were men, and their thoughts were not as meticulous as women. They did not think too much about the matters of the inner courtyard. But Chun Rochio and Ren Yun almost immediately understood. The gaze that looked at Shun Miao was filled with fear. Naturally, the former was shock and the latter was fear. Shin Miao's words were very scary. Yes, that day Ren Yun and Shun Qing's room were so close. If Shin Qing called for help, how could she not hear it? If she heard it, why did she not go over to take a look? Could it be that Ren Yun did it on purpose? Naturally, Ren Yun would not deliberately harm her own daughter, but at that time the one who stayed there should be Shin Miao. Ren Yun had no reason to harm her own daughter, but it was not impossible to harm her Tang niece. Shin Miao directly said it out, and those secret plans in Ren Yun's heart appeared in front of everyone. Chapter 101. And the other possibility that she thought of was that Shun Qing did not call for help at all. Why was that? Could it be that it was intentional that she did not call for help after suffering such humiliation? Why was it intentional? This kind of matter, if it was a small matter, it would be that she was humiliated by the villain, and if it was a big matter, perhaps Shun Qing would be accused of having an illicit relationship with another. This world was not easy for women, and it was better to be safe than sorry. Once a rumor started, it would be very difficult to extinguish it. Shin Miao smiled gently. Second Shen, I think that there are many points of doubt in this matter. Since Second Shu is fair and reasonable, why not send me to the Yamen's Inspector General's office and have an open and honest trial? I will definitely tell everything that I know to Darren and let Darren decide. Perhaps even know who the villain is. No. Ren Yun and Shun Gui spoke at the same time. Ren Yun said no because she was afraid that there would be complications. If Shen Miao were to say those words just now, people with discerning eyes would be able to see that there was something fishy about it. There were many large families in the Ding capital, and it was all right to hide these things, but once it was spread out, it was not that no one would be able to see the truth of her murdering her cousin's niece. Moreover, if this matter was really set out, did Shen Qing still want her innocence? If those rumors and slanders were to spread, one feared that Shen Qing would use a piece of white silk to end her own life. Shin Gui said no, but it was the complete opposite of what Ren Yun thought. He was afraid that this matter would implicate Prince Yu. Now that Prince Yu was able to support him because of Shin Miao. Originally, this matter was already messed up as Shin Miao and Shin Qing's identity had changed. After Prince Yu knew the truth, he would definitely be furious, and if he were to be implicated in any other case and cause trouble for Prince Yu, one feared that Shin Gui's career as an official would be exceptionally difficult. Therefore, the husband and wife who were aggressive just now stopped Shin Miao's suggestion in unison. Then what else does Second Shu want to do? Shin Miao's eyes swept over the long horse whip in Shun Gui's hands and casually asked, "Still want a request for the family law?" The people in the room were silent for a moment as Shun Yu stared at Shin Miao incredulously. Even Shun Yu could see that she was threatening. As if to reflect the surprise in everyone's heart, Shun Miao laughed softly. "If Second Shu were to request for the family law, there is no way, but I have always had a stubborn temperament. That scoundrel wanted me to carry a crime that does not belong to me. When father returns, I will definitely think of ways to report to the Yamen." The meaning behind her words was, today Shin Gui had hit her, and in the future when Shin Xian returned, she would definitely complain and even urge Shin Xian to go to the Yamen to complain, saying that she was the perpetrator. Who knows who she would be suing in the end? Second uncle, are you going to invite him or not? If you're going to invite him, please hurry up. Shun Miao's clear eyes were smiling and there was a hint of ridicule in her words. After all, there are so many people and I cannot escape. Simply described Rong Jingtang's group of people as bandits, as if in the next moment they would order people to hold Shin Miao down and beat her up. Shin Gui had never thought that in the officialdom, he was able to speak the language of people and speak the language of ghosts. He thought that he would be able to deal with any situation like a fish in water, but he did not expect that he would be threatened by his own niece. It was not that he could not think of a way to deal with it, but Shun Miao did not give him a chance to react from the beginning to the end. It was Shun Miao who was speaking, and the more it went on, the sharper and more aggressive her words made one unable to avoid it. There was a flash of surprise in Shunwan's eyes. This second older brother of his was a wily old fox in the court, and even those political enemies had not forced him into such a difficult situation before. And the one who forced him into such a situation was just a 14-year-old young lady. Was the first household really so indestructible? Xinhuan's eyes darkened. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.